Omadakepi. Okay, Elijah Hopkins Dimye. I want to welcome everyone again to our land-based learning project podcast. Again, I'm Elijah Hopkins. Again with Tahashi Jeremy Redigo. I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about, Tahashi. Kind of shoot from the hip here, but prior to our discussion here, we talked a little bit about some of the cool work you're doing with horse riding and shooting, learning the Ehana way of the way our people used to hunt off of horseback. I thought that was pretty cool. But maybe before we get into that, I know we kind of introduce ourselves a little bit, maybe a little bit more background. Sometimes I think people appreciate that kind of knowing kind of who they're listening to here. So, um, you know, like for me, my Tashi, Jeremy, his father and my father are be like first cousins. So my Kushi Lillian Hopkins, uh, when I Ed Ushni, but her older brother is Bill Hopkins. And so Kushi Lillian, she was born in Tokonawa Enemy Swim Lake Traverse Reservation, where she was enrolled. Her father was Abel Hopkins. Uh, his wife, Kushi Lillian's mother, Fola Bigby from Fort Belknap and also from Fort Peck here. My understanding, and her mother was Lillian Nohand Benedict. That's where my Kushi Lillian, she was named after her grandmother. Lillian Benedict was uh, Pabaksa, Dakota from Fort Peck here. Poplar was on the roll. So even though my Kushi and her older brother, Unkana Bill Hopkins, I believe they were both born in Tokonawa, and then they were pretty much those two. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tashi, you're kind of more of a family historian, but they were basically raised in Fort Belknap. Most of them, then they had several more other siblings. Most of them I think, were born in Fort Belknap and whatnot. And so, but that's always been important part of our my family history is the connection to our Dakota people and Sisito Makoche, Fort Peck, Makoche is the Oyanke here, the Oyate from these two tribes. They're similar but a little different. So the Isanti Dakota farther to the east, but that's my father's mother, and then that's my connection to Hanshi Jeremy. We're related like that way. And then my father's father, they're Shahiana or Shahia. They're the Cree people from Rocky Boy. My father's father was Ivan Raining Bird, but my father was raised by his mother's people. And then Ina Chiataha, my mother's side, her mother was Dolores Brenna Moran, born in, I believe, was Wheeler, Montana, but she was mixed French, I think Italian, and member of the Little Shell Bandit Chippewa. So, and then my mother's mother is Washichu. He's from Glasgow. So that's where how I guess I came to be. My mother, father met over there, and after some years of kind of traveling around, kind of all over Montana and to South Dakota, I kind of made my way back up to this part of the country. Started taking some classes when I was early mid 20s, Fort Peck Community College, and that was kind of my pathway back up into this part of the country, into this community specifically. You know where I'm enrolled with Tanshi Jeremy. Most of our families are enrolled over in uh, Lake Traverse Reservation, South Dakota. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to share that much, and then to this day, being a former graduate of Fort Peck Community College, I found my way back here. Ended up meeting my wife, who's an enrolled member of this tribe, and I was just kind of coming through, and then she bought me over the head and knocked me out, drugged me to her teepee, and the rest is history. But and Tashi, Jeremy has a similar story. His wife, Laverne, maybe I can let him kind of explain a little bit about that. But tomorrow, visiting with Tahashi, he's coming up here, and his boy has a buffalo hunt tomorrow, and I really respect his approach to this, and he can probably talk about that too. I respect how that he wants to train his or have his boy experience as much as we can in a modern way, a traditional buffalo hunt, and he's reached out to some individuals, so I'm looking forward to being able to help out tomorrow with that a little bit. But yeah, Tanshi, maybe if you could explain a little bit about that, maybe as much as you want to share about yourself and maybe about buffalo hunt or wherever you want to go, whatever you think.
Yeah, so like Don Elijah said, a lot of same story as far as our family and where I come from. Um, but when I grew up, when I was born in Bozeman, Montana. My dad was going to school down there, and then right after I was born, he graduated and then moved down to Ashland, Montana, on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. He got a job at St. Lebre Indian School, and he's been there ever since. So originally, I started to grow up down there, and then my parents separated, and my mom moved to Helena, and so then I grew up back and forth between those two places. And then, of course, we have a strong connection to the High Line, all the way from Poplar all the way to Browning, Montana. I have relatives all over the place on both sides of my family, and so I always tell people I'm Montana, born and raised through and through. Lived all over the state and worked all over the state, and raised heck all over the state.
Uh,
But about 10 years ago, I chose to move back or, move to Siston or to Enemy Swim to reconnect with our people from there, our relatives and our way of life. I moved there strictly to learn the language. And so that's what I've spent the last 10 years doing, just kind of in honor of our grandpa Abel Hopkins, and just reconnecting with that. And we actually live right adjacent to the original land allotment that our Kushi Wakahari we had received. And that's where our grandpa Abel grew up at and was raised there. And so, but my wife is from here, right here in Poplar. She's both Nakota from the West End and then from Dakota on this side. And so we come back here a lot because of her family and her relatives here. And then, so yeah, right now we've come back for our youngest son. He's 15 years old. And we believe in doing these kind of coming of age ceremonies for our kids. And so all of our daughters went through their Ishnati. And so for young men, I think that for the young girls doing the Ishnati and the coming of age ceremonies are really coming back strong in a lot of communities. The purpose of it is just to teach and show those young people like the importance how important they are, and to honor them and to surround them with love and compassion and teachings and all of these things, so it can help them, they can carry those things into the future. But I've noticed is that there's not a whole lot that's going on for our young men, and in some ways I think it's more crucial for our young men, because a lot of our men have in our communities have lost their identity or their responsibility, their roles, because when everything happened to our people, the women still remained true to the roles of being life givers and mothers and all of that stuff. But the men, their responsibilities, it was like a lot of that was taken away from them. And so I really believe in doing a lot to try to help our young men find their direction in life. And so one of those is through hunting. I believe that hunting is a really powerful thing if it's done ethically, if it's done in the right way. Uh, so that's what I want to do for my older boys. They're all hunters, they've gone through all that, but I unfortunately never did like in a ceremonial way to teach them. And so now with my youngest son, that's what our intention is to have him go through the process so that he learns to have respect for the Tatanko Yate, taking a life, what our relationship with Pateo Yate, Tatanko Yate, what that entails, because this is something that our people have done since the beginning of time, and we have a lot of stories connected to the Buffalo Nation, and so to me, it only makes sense that we uh, raise him in a way to have him fully understand that and to do it in a good way. His grandpa is Unga Jojo Miller from the Wadopana band out there in Oswego. So we're real fortunate to. That's my wife's uncle, her mom's brother. So we're real fortunate to have somebody like him in our family and to be able to give us guidance in the way that we are going to do things. So we're real thankful for that. But yeah, I just think it's important that we get to teach him that, and he gets to his first experience gets to be that of a killing a buffalo. A lot of people it's usually a deer or something else, but we were fortunate enough to get this tag, and we decided to go forward with it. So a little nervous in some ways, but I know that it's going to be done in the right way, and it'll be good. It'll turn out how it's supposed to. So that's what we get to do tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no, I think sometimes I don't we realize how lucky we are, man. Like those of us that have been able to one live in a rural area and like in Montana on the High Line, we have you know, whether it's on the reservation, off the reservation, access to wild game. A lot of people don't have that. So I think part of we tie back our land-based learning, why it's important, because that can be many, many different things. But I think valuing that is important. Maintaining that as part of our culture, not for necessarily for trophy hunting, but for like one for promoting health and wellness for our food and sourcing our own food. There's a lot that ties into that, but also there's that cultural component of like, having respect for the animal and respecting that whole process. So that's really important. And also like, but specifically with the Tatanka Oyate, with the like the Buffalo people and having the opportunity to have to hunt buffalo. I was like, it blows my mind sometimes, man. Like that's why I'm always like eternally grateful to other podcasts I've been a part of or giving Wopida pledge because it's like gratitude for being able to even participate in buffalo hunts is crazy. I remember being real little and seeing some buffalo like a Yellowstone or someplace, but I never thought I'd be able to actually hunt one. So I've gotten older. I've had been on, 5 or 6 hunts now. I've been able to do that, the last 3, 4 years, pretty much through the college, man, and just my inroads working here and the passion that I have for like learning language and culture. It kind of ties into that type of stuff. And so I was telling my wife, I was like, you know what? I said, I don't think people realize how good we have it here. Tribal members of Fort Peck, any tribe where you can access hunting buffalo. I said, my own lineage, I was thinking about it last year. I went on a hunt with my dad with a buffalo. He'd in his 70s, he never seen buffalo, but he'd never hunted a buffalo like that. And so I was like, wow, man, he was like elated to be a part of that. And I was like thinking about it. You figure 18 mid 1800s since, over 150, 60 years, however long since our people, that chain has been broken since what you're instilling into your son, having that go back to you figure 5, 6 generations since that's probably happened, even though now it's more modern, but still having that connection with the buffalo, that's really, really powerful, man. And so I think, doing our best to like promote that. And even before our podcast call, we were talking about that. There's some communities that I'd like to get to that point, processing the buffalo as much as possible. But, Tanshi Jeremy's visited with other people that are doing the same thing, like traditional buffalo hunts, but they're relearning, the process. I'm talking like with us, we still use a truck to load up the buffalo and take it to a shop and kind of take the hide off there and kind of do some of the butchering there. But there's some communities that try and do as much as possible right on site. And I was listening to Tanshi talking about using as much as you can. Like, talking about the bile, and some people use all those different parts for medicines, and I was like, man, there's so much to learn, so much to learn. And so even our your son down the road, he may not like completely understand it right now, but like we're setting those tones, man. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, Tanshi, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, because otherwise, like, we were talking earlier about your the training that you're going through, man. Really taking up your Dakota to another level with uh archery hunting, or learning to shoot off of the horseback, man. I was like kind of wild. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but that's something I think people definitely up here. I don't even know when it hasn't happened in years, man.
Yeah. So first, real quick, I'll go back to the buffalo hunt and I acknowledge Arlo and Lisa Ironcloud. They've been traveling all over the country. I don't know how many years now, uh, teaching, learning, going through the process of doing these buffalo hunts in different communities. And I believe, hopefully, I have the story right. But just like the rest of us, they didn't grow up doing these things. They had to learn. But through their journey of traveling all over and doing this, that they've really kind of, in my opinion, for modern times, have mastered being able to utilize all the different parts of the buffalo and having an intimate knowledge and relationship with our relatives, the Pteoyate. So a couple of weeks ago, Tahashi Avery Jones and those guys had put on a buffalo kill down there, and they brought Arlo and Lisa in to do it. So we went down there, my wife and I, and participated in that. And it was, growing up as a hunter my whole life, I know how to butcher, I know how to do all those things, but taking it to the next level of learning all of the anatomy and the way that our people use different parts that are just not really known about today was really an awesome experience. And so that's our goal tomorrow, is to really try and uh, to do that, to take our time and to be patient with it and really utilize as much of it as we possibly can. And the other part is what we're experiencing in this world today, with a lot of uncertainty, prices of food going up, all of these things, is it's also an opportunity for us to uh, be able to provide not just food for ourselves as a family, but also because part of the ceremony is our son giving a lot of this meat away to those that need it. That's showing to him to be a provider and a protector for the people, and that you can provide through hunting. So that's going to be a part of this also. So I just wanted to acknowledge those guys, because I learned a
Mm.
lot from them when we were down there. And I also think it's really cool, really unique, because of the history of the land here. Whether we're talking Fort Peck all the way down to Fort Belknap, and our people that came from here, this is one of the last places that the buffalo were wild before they were nearly extinct. And that's one reason why a lot of the tribes, of course, Nakota and others that were already here, but others that came into this area, was because of that, because it was one of the last places where there were still buffalo that you could hunt. And so there's a deep history. This was a main like corridor for the migration of those large herds back in the day. And then both the tribes, Fort Peck and Fort Belknap, have a long history of reestablishing buffalo herds amongst the tribes in the United States. And our grandpa, Bill Bigby, was a big part of that over in Fort Belknap. Well, one of our uncles was telling us a story about how they started theirs. I think they have like 1,500 head or something over there by Snake Butte. So a lot of history there. And so to kind of take pride in a lot of that. And of course, here in Fort Peck, what they do, with the Yellowstone and the quarantine and getting those buffalo and then just distributing them out to other tribes. So that's pretty cool. But so yeah, we'll kind of go into doing the horseback archery. I've twice now I've gone to a workshop down in New Mexico learning to uh, shoot shoot bow and arrow from the back of a horse. And I gotta say, there's like no other experience in the world like it, man.
Mhm.
It's awesome. It's awesome feeling to do that. And so uh I was thinking about, because I know Tahashi here had an experience trying to shoot a buffalo with a bow.
Mm.
And it didn't quite go as planned.
Yeah.
So, but I was thinking, man, think of what that would be like if you could actually, like back in the day, shoot a buffalo with a bow from horseback. Who knows if that'll ever happen again? I know there's people that have attempted that. Um, I don't think they were successful, but I definitely think it's a possibility. It's something that could be done. Not saying that I'm going to try it or anything, but I just like the idea of it and the thought of it. But the idea of, like I say, the word everybody throws around nowadays is like decolonizing, right? And I kind of struggle with that word, but it is a thing, right? Like we need to reconnect. We need to reconnect with who we are as a people. And so my history for the last 15 years has been, a big part of it is revitalizing our traditional games, lacrosse, whatever it is, man. We have so many games that our people played a long time ago that have either been, like kind of disappeared and been pushed to the side, or they were, a lot of the sports and the games that you see in modern America today come from our people, but they're colonized. They take it and they manipulate it and they change the value system and all of that. And so the same thing exists with archery today. When we look at compound bows, recurve bows, long bows, these are coming from a more modern, sterilized way of archery, where when you look at the indigenous people throughout the world, specifically in North America, and then get even more specific to the northern plains, we had specific style and a specific way of shooting our bow and arrows, how they were made, the purpose of it, because it all depends on where you're at in the world of why they use the bow and arrows, or the environment that the materials, all of those things impacted on the style of archery that they had. So that's my goal, is to like start to undo all those things and to start to reconnect our young people in our communities with the origins of where these things come from, the language connected to it, the stories that are connected to it. Where did the bow and arrow come from? We have, and not just amongst Dakota and Nakota people, but in other tribes, a lot of these things are connected to creation stories. They're connected to ceremonies. It's not just a primitive tool that our people used. We have stories about these things, and they sustained us. There was a reason they were given to us, and so to me, they're much more than that. Uh, so yeah, and then of course the relationship with the horse is a whole other subject, right? And we have stories about that. We have now there's visiting with Dakota Goodhouse, and he was doing the winter count stuff, that when we zoomed with him, and he was talking about the horse and how they have proof that we had horse prior
Mm.
to the Spaniards. And so we know we have, as Dakota people, we had a relationship with that horse, and we have a different approach to horsemanship, natural horsemanship. I learned a lot from Philip Whiteman Jr. down in Northern Cheyenne, and he uses the horse for a lot of the work that he does. And so I was fortunate to learn a lot of the philosophies and the teachings connected to that. I don't consider myself to be a skilled horseman or anything like that, but I was fortunate that the things that I do know about the horse comes from more of a cultural perspective. And so now at this point in my life, that's what I want to start doing, is building that relationship with the Yate, and uh, developing the relationship, because I believe that, like Philip would say, when you work with a horse, it's the same as working with children. And the whole philosophies with that is something that helped me in the work that I do. So now I think it'll take me to the next level by doing that, and by I had a horse. I owned a horse previously, but I had to put it down. She had a stroke. It was kind of a sad ordeal, but my hopes is to get some horses and to start doing this in my community. I have some other horsemen in the community that are skilled horsemen, and they're on board to start doing this and start reinstilling this pride in our young people and teaching them to shoot from horseback. I'm all for rodeo and doing things like that, but this is something that is directly connected to us as Dakota people. So I think it's only makes sense to train them and raise them in a way to do it. And then there's in America, it's not really that big of a deal, but there is some competitions and some people that compete in it. But internationally, worldwide, it's a huge sport, horseback archery, mounted archery. And so my goal is to raise up some young people that can represent the Ocheti Shakoi and go out and compete internationally, go to Mongolia and Turkey and South Korea and all these places where mounted archery is a big deal, because our young people, a lot of them, they already have the gift of horsemanship. Now we just need to teach them
Pair it up.
to put it together now.
Heck yeah, like I was thinking when we were talking about the archery hunt. I tried to take a buffalo. Was it last fall? Yeah, last fall. I tried it with a compound bow, but man, I had really difficult time getting close to them, man, because really open area. But I really learned a lot from that, man. Every time I'd get within about 100 yards or whatever, easy with the rifle, easy. And that's like 99.9% of the people that go out there and harvest buffalo. That's what they're using rifle. Don't even really leave their truck. But I wanted to try it, challenge myself. I'd heard people would do that, like these professional archery guys that do stuff on TV. They would go out there, buy these big tags and stuff. But they let us source one for free. So I went out there. About half a day, I would get out there and they'd put me on some, and then I'd have to get within about 50, 40 yards. Man, really. Tehikido, Tanshi. And but I wasn't prepared. So like I'm not necessarily gonna say that I'm not gonna do it or I will do it. I need to like think on it, but if I do it, I need to be prepared, man, because like I was like army crawling through the bushes, and it was like rose hip bushes, and I was like you really gotta like know the terrain, kind of know what you're getting into. But I did one sneak for about like 45 minutes straight, man. Went about 100 yards, and I was getting close on the head, about 20 head. Every once in a while, a couple of peek their head up, and I would kind of lay down in the bush, man. People were watching me too. And then something must have happened. I got about 70 yards. It's like, man, if I can get another 30 yards in, I'll have a shot at one of them. And all of a sudden, someone must have spooked the herd, man, because all of a sudden I'm laying in the bushes. When I say bushes, they're not really like big. It's fall, so there's no foliage. It's just like there's a little bit of cover. And then I got about 20 head running right at me at about 70 yards, man. So like it makes you rethink things. I was like, all right, then all of a sudden I thought they would see me. So at about 50, 40 yards, I just stood up because I was worried I was going to get trampled to death, man. So then they seen me, and then they kind of like, they made a 45-degree pivot. I just kind of let them run by me, but it was like my heart was pumping. I was like, man, this is the way that I go out, But when I was thinking about that, I had heard stories, in my research, talking about buffalo, and the transcripts, the old interviews from old buffalo hunters, whether it's different reservations, Pine Ridge, and in my research learning about bows and whatnot, they would talk about it was dangerous. It was dangerous to hunt buffalo. It was not uncommon for people to die, to get seriously like injured for life because broken arms, different things like that. So like, I think that's definitely something people should not like take lightly, man. When we're talking about they're definitely a dangerous animal, and I know Tanshi does, and I don't. We never try to romanticize. We try to have like a natural perspective on respecting animals, the buffalo. I always try to have a cultural perspective, a spiritual aspect to like looking at things, man. But like that definitely brought me back down to planet Earth. I was like, this ain't a game, man. This isn't a big hunt show on YouTube. But yeah, man. So there's that, and then but yeah, I'm definitely interested in it. And I always thought that would be like wickedly chill, man, to get on that that horse, man. And even if you're on a rifle, but ideally with a bow, man, to hunt right off a horse like that would be like the next level, man. Um, but I think even just the process, man, because in Fort Peck here, Fort Peck Community College, they've had some people that what do they call it, equine therapy. It's where basically you work with horses and just that process of working with them. It's scientific academic term to describe the therapy that comes with connecting with the horse. And people do workshops and there's definitely a need for it. But I think that's again going back to like pre-contact, pre-reservation era. That was probably we probably didn't have as many mental health issues, but like that was a natural thing, was like connecting with the horse. And because they say they can like sense, man, if you're like nervous, like that's going to affect your relationship. But I think just learning the people that I have talked with, like Leon Stewart was talking about that a little bit, just every little thing, how you touch the horse, the energy you have with it, all those types of things. So I'm definitely interested in learning about it, man. I think that would be kind of cool. And the college here has done some stuff. I think his name is John Eagle over in Standing Rock. Will come over here and do some like workshops and whatnot. But it'd be cool to kind of participate in that a little bit more. And yeah, man. So, but what else you want to talk about, Tanshi?
We could continue on with about the horse stuff, and I'll share a
Mm,
little bit more about like stuff that Philip had taught me because um, working with youth for like the last 15 years, he would use his created this medicine wheel model, and he would utilize that for working with youth and working with horses. He would combine those two together,
mm,
and he would say how like, because we're a horse people, right? But he would say horses and children are exactly the same in the sense that like they don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And when he would go into a round corral and he would do like these different exercises with his horse, and like you were saying, right, they can sense how your anxiety or your anger or whatever emotions or things that you're carrying. And so because we as native people, we're spiritual, right? And so he would always say you have to center yourself. And there's, of course, different ways that you do that, but by centering yourself is like when we were talking about coming of age ceremony, that's in reality what that does for a young person is you're teaching them, because when you have little babies, toddlers, young boys, young girls, they're still like wakan, right? They're still connected to the spirit world. They're still have a lot of innocence to them, I guess you could say. And when you come to that point in your life where you are um, going through changes, that's when you really start to take on like our human behaviors. And so with that, we start to move away from that center, and you could look at that center however you want, but it's usually, the the spirit world or
mm,
whatever. And so as you're taking on those human characteristics, you get older, you're slowly moving away from that center. So when they go through coming of age ceremony, you're actually teaching them how to center themselves, because they're learning about prayer, they're learning about going without food and water. All of these things that exist within our ceremony is about us reconnecting to the spiritual side of things. And so, but then for us as adults, we really start to lose that. And so it's even more important for us to center ourselves. So when you go into a group of kids, a classroom, where whatever it is, you yourself have to be centered. You have to be in a good place, because those kids are going to pick up on that.
mm,
And I think that's one of the biggest struggles we have in our educational system today, is that uh, a lot of our adults, even our own native people, but especially non-native people, when they go into our classrooms, they're not centering themselves. They don't give the kids enough credit to understand that these kids have intuition, that they can feel and they can see and observe and understand things, and that
mm,
they're going to respond. It's a mirror image. That's what Philip would say, is that it's a mirror concept. So when you're working with kids or you're working with a horse, it's actually a reflection of yourself. and where you're at in your life, where you're at in that day, that specific time. So he would center himself, whether, using cedar, he would even center himself with the ground within that corral, even the manure from the horse. He doesn't touch it, but he would like put his hands over it and he would bless himself with it, because he says, I'm making a connection to that horse. I'm learning to become one with it. And before he even gets on the horse, he's already going through that process. And I've seen other people breathe into the nostrils and the mouth of the horse to build that connection before they even attempt to get on the horse. And then you go around, you touch it, you're more or less going to like ask permission, all of these things, and that's kind of like a Dakota perspective or way of approaching a horse, instead of the literally breaking a horse. That's more of a linear concept. But he would go into that round corral and he would he would demonstrate. He would take the halter and he would go towards that horse. And of course, the natural reaction of that horse is to back up away from him. And then he would turn around and he would be talking to us. And he said, now, he would center himself. And then all of a sudden that horse would come up and he would put his head over his shoulder. And then he would gently turn around and then he would be able to put the halter onto that horse. And he said, he goes, what that demonstrates is, he says, is natural law. And natural law, if we try to force things in life, we naturally push it away from us. He says, but if you center yourself, you pray on these things, you speak these things into existence, you manifest it, and it will naturally come to you. And so using that philosophy, even though he's using a horse to demonstrate this, that exists within anything within our way of life and everyday life, so you can't force these things. And I was able to take that philosophy and use it when I learned the language. I've been part of language program, different things where they would like almost have that linear approach of like forcing you to speak, just a real linear approach of how to learn the language. But if we believe this language is sacred and that it has a spirit attached to it, all we have to do is just meet it halfway, and it's going to meet us the other half. And then we're going to manifest it, and it's going to start to become a part of us, and opportunities are going to present themselves as long as we're open and willing for that. But we have to be spiritually grounded in order for that stuff to happen. And so I've used that philosophy working with kids, whatever it is. So learn a lot from the horse. And I think that that approach of whether we're working with youth or working with horses, they're going to teach us. It's not about us teaching them. It's about them teaching us, because they're going to expose and show the places in our life where we have to correct how we're living, because we've been disconnected from that center because we're adults. And all we try to do is just be clever and use our ways of thinking instead of feeling. We get into our head too much as opposed to getting outside of our head. And so I think that that's a gift that the Shuakonyate gives us.
Yeah, no. Oh shit, man! You should write some books on that. Well, that's good. That's really good, man. Like I think at some point, definitely want to get our college to be more involved. We have call that a department here, agricultural grant. I forget the name of it, but they do some work with equine therapy, usually once or twice in the year, usually in the summers, man. But I'd like to get more involved. So I think at some point there's a way we can combine things just moving forward. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, I guess they say, but like I see like there's so much like potential, man, collaboration for like infusing things together. Like when I think of like our elk camp, man, how cool would that be if we had some horses at some point, man, instead of like say, Tahashi, get out of that side by side, hop on this horse, Tahashi. No, but that would be cool at some point, man. Go on horseback, man, and then have that connection, and then you could like go into different parts of the country, man, through horseback, man. I think that just opens up just more like possibilities to access more areas. But I think just that process of like forcing yourself to like be present and combining things, I think would only kind of make things better. But Yeah, Tanshi, I gotta teach an archery class here in 4 minutes. I don't know how I'm gonna get over there across Pablo, but we'll go ahead and shut it down for now. Hinakcha Pawa Chima Takepi. Any closing remarks, Tanshi?
Oh,
All right, Dokstake.
okay.